Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to start on phase 3.
All right, so tell us, Mike, what's the goal of phase 3?
Goal of phase 3 is basically to develop your core muscles. We want to go ahead and make sure that the belly fat doesn't come back, and in order to do that, we actually build more muscles around your abs, but also around the obliques and your lower back, so this whole waistline area. The reason we want to do that is because areas that have more muscle actually carries less fat.
Yeah.
A good example of it would basically be I got a good buddy of mine, name is Johnson, and he has one of the most ridiculously lean legs you have ever seen. Looks like one of those bodybuilders on stage, you know, probably 4% at his legs. But his upper body doesn't have as much muscle. It's still pretty muscular, but doesn't have as much. And he's probably at about maybe 18 or 19% on his upper body. And he holds all the body fat there because he has more muscle in his legs than he does in his upper body. So the whole concept is, let's put more muscle on your abs and around your whole entire core area, so this way the fat doesn't come back. Because we want to go ahead and make sure that we do this one time and you can get that lean six-pack abs and be able to hold on to it for a very, very long time.
Yeah, and I think it's another really important secret to getting six-pack abs that a lot of guys don't know about. They don't know that if you build up muscle on an area, it's going to actually prevent fat from coming back. But yeah, you know, it's really key, and yeah, I think that's a big reason why phase 3 is so important, because first of all, you know, it really like shocks you out of that routine, and second of all, it really it prevents the belly fat from coming back and really gives you the muscular look in the six-pack abs that guys are looking for.
In phase 3, you're going to find that there's actually less diverse exercises. We're actually going to even more simpler exercises, but they're actually going to be a lot tougher. Because phase 3 is a pretty special phase. It's actually only 12 days. And it's also the shortest phase. The reason why is because phase 3 was actually meant to shock your muscles. So it's a two-part. We want to go ahead and build core muscles first, and at the same time, we're going to shock your muscles and basically get them going and get them ready for phase 4. You know, we were talking, and shocking muscles are very, very important because people hit plateaus all the time. In the gyms, everywhere you go, you see guys working out and you don't get any results, and you're doing the workouts right, but your muscles are just used to it. And so phase 3 also works as a shock. That's why it's only 12 days, because it's very, very intense.
Yeah, and I know, you know, this is definitely going to be a shock. I mean, basically, you know, over the course of the first few phases, you know, it was probably really hard at first, but you probably kind of built up a tolerance for the workout. So now they probably aren't seeming so hard, but this is going to be just like you're right back in the beginning of phase 1 again, and that's really what we're aiming for.
So you'll find that the exercises are going to be heavy, so your rep range is going to be a lot lower, but at the same time, you're going to start feeling your body's going to start going through a lot of different changes. And in phase 3, you'll see that on top of building your core muscles and on top of shocking your muscles, you're going to see even a higher significance in metabolism.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know, yeah, like a lot of these like full body exercises that we'll be doing in phase 3, there is some direct ab exercise, like as you mentioned, but really, like, if you're doing like so much volume of these like really heavy compound exercise, you're gonna really feel in your abs. Like after you do these workouts, your abs should be sore after every workout.
Definitely, we're engaging a lot of core in pretty much every single exercise. Another thing for phase 3 is we're almost at the end to where we have to go into full implementation when it comes to the zero willpower eating system. So we're now up to the point where you have to eat 5 Tupperware meals. So the reason why we do that is because, remember, we've been taking steps. So we're almost there. We have to go ahead and make sure that it happens in this phase so you can be fully ready for phase 4, to where you go ahead and really shed those last pounds and really, you know, reveal your six-pack abs.
Great. Okay, so as you mentioned before, this is going to be 12 days of really intense, heavy shock training almost. Can you tell us again why you made it so intense and why you didn't include any rest days in the 12 days?
Well, basically, the reason why we want to go ahead and do it that way is because when you first start exercising, your muscles aren't really used to stimulation, it's not used to these exercises and the way to do them, so they're going to grow, they're going to change at a rapid rate. But as you go into phase 1 and phase 2 and you start finishing up those phases, your muscles are starting to adapt, you know, because that's how our bodies are built. Our bodies are built to adapt. And so it's in our nature. So what we want to do is we don't want to adapt. We want to keep change. We want to keep changing until we get to the figure that we want, you know, and have our dream body. So That's why we developed this phase here as a shock. So this way, it's almost like we go ahead and re-shock your muscles and get them re-going. This way your muscles are renewed, it's fresh, and it will be ready to absorb all the exercises and all the benefits that we have in phase 4. So phase 4 wouldn't be able to be very beneficial, wouldn't be very effective if phase 3 wasn't there to kind of re-shock the muscles and get them used to it. Yeah. If not, you would be just going through plateaus almost immediately.
Yeah, and this, I mean, you know, this is a very hard phase again, but you're going to see really, really massive results in these 12 days just because it's such intense training. But can you tell us why is it only 12 days? If it's such like massive results that guys are seeing in these 12 days, why is it that, you know, we don't just train this way permanently?
Well, because you're not going to rest in these next 12 days. So reason why, we want to make sure it's a shock, which means your muscles are not going to be used to it even though you've been training for over 8 weeks now. Your muscles are still going to go ahead and really get affected by these exercises. So we took the rest days out, so you're just going to do 12 days. Now, your question, Dan, was basically why do we need to go ahead and do only 12? Why not just, you know, do it longer like the other phases? Well, the reason why is because if you go longer in a program like this, then you're going to overwork your muscles, because you got to think about the principle of building muscle. We break it down and we rebuild it. But in these next 12 days, we're doing a lot of breaking. We're breaking it on a daily basis. So even though you're going to sleep and you're going to eat right and you're going to recover, it's still pretty intense, to the point that if we go longer than 12 days, it's not going to be enough rest time. I mean, you're going to have to be able to rest. You're going to have to kind of start lightening the load, because like I said, this is very intense. And you'll see that when you start reading the workouts, you start going through the reps, you're like, wow, I got to go pretty heavy to do these reps. So very intense. We can't go too long on it, but 12 days will be just the perfect amount of time to shock your muscles, get them renewed, get them ready, and then you can go into phase 4. Yeah,
definitely. And another thing which we talked about before is like after a guy has completed all like 4 phases, and maybe later on in his training, if he encounters a plateau, could he use this phase again to get
Definitely. This phase also is really good because, like Dan said, you can actually come back to this phase at any time after you finish this program. You'll find that, you know, people always hit plateaus, and so this phase was also designed to not only build core muscles and shock, but it was designed so you can use it over and over. Just remember that you only do this phase for about 12 days, and then you go back into a regular routine like phase 4 for you to continue, you know, for the rest of the time. But you can come back anytime though.
Great. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about building core muscle. How is core muscle built, and why are we doing it in this way?
Well, core muscles are built in a lot of different ways, but what is the most effective way is actually doing it to where it's an indirect. And what I mean indirect, that means a good example would be if you're going to do a military press, to where you can either sit on the chair with a back support, and you grab the barbell right here and you lean back like this and you press up, right? Well, you're not engaging your core because they're back support. So you're literally just pretty much resting, and you're just using your shoulder muscles and your triceps. But in this phase, the same exercise is going to be done to where you're standing up off the chair, and you have to go ahead and not have a back support. And when you press the weight up, you'll realize that you have to actually tighten up your entire core area in order to do this exercise. If not, you'll feel like you're going to bend sideways, or you're going to bend back and forth. So it helps you really develop those core muscles right here. Yeah. So at the same time, it makes it a lot more intense, and there's a lot of safety precautions in doing these exercises. That's another thing we're going to cover in just a bit.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this is another really big key to building six-pack abs that a lot of guys don't know about, which is that, you know, the best exercises for building the six-pack abs are those heavy compound movements, because, you know, it forces you to develop a good core, or else, you know, you're going to tip over and, you know, you're not going to be able to do it.
Yeah, the core is your primary, it's how we move. If we didn't have core muscles, I mean, we would just be limp, you know, we would just be limp like cooked spaghetti. Yeah. So you got to make sure your core is really strong, but at the same time, of course, you know, the more muscles we have here, the less fat we have here.
Yeah. So. Okay, and let's also talk about, I know there are some direct ab exercises in this phase. How are the direct ab exercises in this phase different than the ones in the other phases?
Basically, it's going to be a little harder. They're a little heavier. And you'll find that in other phases, you'll be doing maybe different type of crunches or something to where it's almost more of a cardiovascular aspect. But in this phase, they're simpler and they're going to be very direct. And you'll notice that it's going to be a little harder. So you're not really using weight, but the angle that we're gonna do these exercises will be very, very direct, and you'll feel that it's a little more difficult. They're a little more difficult ab exercises, even though they're not really more complicated.
Yeah. And actually, one other point I want to touch on. Now, this is again like a very hard 12 days. If someone wanted to kind of like shortcut this entire process, would you ever recommend they do this before doing phase 1?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And for a very, very good reason. This phase is designed to basically make sure that you're at a time to where your muscles are a little more developed, your muscles are used to working out and recovery, and at the same time you should have very, very perfect form by now. Very important, because this phase you're always engaging your core. So when you're using your core, if you don't do these exercises right, you're actually going to hurt your core. You're actually going to hurt your lower back. You're going to pull something, because these exercises are so labor intensive. Yeah. So I would definitely not recommend you skipping through phase 1 and 2 and coming straight to phase 3. If not, you might have a very big chance of getting hurt or getting injured.
Definitely, but someone who has gone through phase 1 and phase 2 is going to have the base necessary to do phase 3.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's talk about the total body effect. What you guys expect in terms of the strength increases in phase 3?
Well, you increase significantly in strength because you're using multiple muscle groups at the same time. An example would be in this phase. Let's say a front squat press, to where you do a squat and you can hold on to a barbell here in front of you. So when you squat down and you come back up, you would press the barbell up. So in order to do an exercise like that, you have to be very strong in your legs to do the squat. You have to be very strong in your core to be able to hold the weight like this, because you may fall forward or you may fall back. And as you come up, you have to be very strong in your shoulders and your triceps to be able to press it up. Yeah. And then when you come back down, everything has to tighten again. So it basically works your entire body in one exercise. But that's why this phase is so much harder than some of the other phases, and that's also why you can't skip those other phases before coming here, because you're not going to be ready for these exercises. And again, we got to stress that these exercises have to be done with perfect form. Yeah, if not, it's a safety issue.
Yeah, and I think when guys are doing this, and if they complete all 12 days in the right way, after this phase, this is where you start to develop that really freakish functional strength. Yeah. After doing things like this, I can do things like, for example, one day, I was at a bar with my girlfriend, and our feet were hurting, and she was wearing high heels. So we're about a quarter mile away from my house, so I just hoist her on my back and carry her back a quarter mile. And after doing phase 3, that is the type of thing that you're going to be able to do. You're going to have the functional strength, which is really, really going to.
Dan, you have like caveman strength.
Yeah, and this is where it comes from. It comes from doing that phase 3 type thing. Definitely. And when I hit a plateau, just shocking it out like that.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about the afterburn effect. Now I know in phase 3, phase 3 is going to be so intense that these guys are going to be pretty much continuously in afterburn. Can you tell them how to make sure that they're getting that and why it's so important again?
Okay, well, let me remind you what afterburn is again. Afterburn is basically to where your body is going into recovery, your muscles are going into recovery, and it needs nutrients. So what it does is it's going to